welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're not just visiting a galaxy far, far away. We're really getting into a phenomenon, the remarkable success of Andor.
It really does stand out, doesn't it? Especially for a prequel.
Right, focusing on a character where, well, we already knew his ending from Rogue One.
Exactly. There is definitely that initial question hanging in the air, what's the story here? We know how it ends for Cassian.
Precisely. Cassian Andor, vital to getting the Death Star plans, but a character with a known fate.
Mm-hmm.
There was definite skepticism early on.
But somehow Andor didn't just find a story, it kind of exploded critically.
It really did.
Yeah.
And it connected deeply with maybe a specific but very dedicated audience. It carved out this unique space, didn't it? Mm-hmm. Both in Star Wars and, well, in that whole prestige TV landscape.
Yeah, it feels different. So our mission today is to unpack how it managed that.
Okay.
And our sources point to four main things. The specific, very grounded vision of the showrunner, Tony Gilroy. Then there's the execution, the writing, direction, acting, all top-notch. Then the world building, making it feel real and immersive. Themes it tackled: politics, oppression.
Heavy stuff, but handled well.
Absolutely. And finally, how critics and audiences actually responded to it all.
Okay, so let's dive in, starting right at the beginning with the architect, Tony Gilroy, the showrunner, and really the person behind Andor's whole distinct vibe.
Yeah, and his background is key here, I think. He's known for these grounded thrillers, right? Michael Clayton is the big one people mention.
Right, not exactly space opera.
Not at all.
Yeah.
He also did some uncredited work on Rogue One, which is interesting. So he's not coming at it like a lifelong Star Wars superfan,
Which seems like it was maybe a strength. This whole thing was, he said, to be real and to be honest, make it real for people.
And you absolutely see that. It permeates the show. We're not constantly seeing big Jedi battles.
No lightsaber duels every episode.
Exactly. And instead, you're dropped into the sort of mundane machinery of the Empire.
Mundane but terrifying.
Right. The petty ambitions, the bureaucracy, the compromises people make just to get by under this regime, it shifts the focus.
From the epic battles to the human cost.
And Gilroy himself admitted he wasn't steeped in Star Wars lore initially. That outsider view. But importantly, with Kathleen Kennedy's support at Lucasfilm, it allowed for something genuinely fresh.
It really did.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the structure he set up, because that was pretty deliberate too.
Very deliberate and kind of bold, actually.
Season 1, 12 episodes, right? But broken into 4 blocks of 3 episodes each.
Each with a different director, covering 1 year of Cassian's life.
And then season 2 was even more ambitious.
Yeah, covering the next 4 years leading right up to Rogue One. Again, in those 3-episode blocks, but with these big time jumps in between.
Which is not your standard streaming show structure at all.
No. And he talked about this idea of negative space.
Right.
Not needing to show everything. Focusing on specific intense periods, like maybe 3 days a year apart, and letting you fill in the gaps.
It demands a bit more from the viewer, maybe?
I think so. Which lines it up with other prestige dramas. People called it a slow burn initially.
Which it was, maybe, compared to some things.
But that pacing was praised for how it built tension.
Yeah.
And the payoffs were huge.
Absolutely. And central to this whole unique approach was consciously moving away from a lot of the standard Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, that was a big part of it. Minimizing the Jedi, the Sith, the Force even.
Which makes sense contextually, right?
Yeah.
Coast Order 66, the Jedi were mostly myths to ordinary people.
Exactly. So the focus shifts. It becomes about espionage, imperial bureaucracy, how a rebellion actually starts with ordinary people, basically.
We've pushed too far.
And they really dialed back the overt fan service. The winks and nods.
Which could have been tempting.
For sure. But when familiar things did show up, Mon Mothma, certain planets, that arrestor cruiser.
Yeah, the cruiser looked amazing.
It felt integrated, like it was there to build the world, not just to, poke the fans.
It felt earned. And it really shows Gilroy's commitment, doesn't it? He spent over 5 years on this. He even called it potentially his most important piece of work.
You feel that investment on screen, which naturally brings us to how they pulled off this vision.
Yeah.
The actual execution, the writing, directing, acting.
Yeah, let's get into that. Because the writing, the praise was just about universal.
Sharp, terrific, thrillingly intricate, complex characters. Those words just keep coming up in the reviews.
And it wasn't just clever plotting, it was the dialogue too. So nuanced.
Intelligent, economical.
Right.
Think about that scene between Mon Mothma and Davos Skulden.
Oh, yeah. So tense.
So much happening under the surface, all about power and what's not being said.
And the writing team, Tony Gilroy, Dan Gilroy, Bo Williman, Stephen Schiff, clearly a powerhouse group.
Definitely. And certain episodes just stand out, don't they? People always talk about The Eye, the Aldani heist.
Incredible television.
And One Way Out, the prison break.
Nail biting.
And Rick's Road, the riot on Ferrix. And then in season 2, that whole Gorman arc. Just stellar writing.
And the direction really matched that quality. Gilroy apparently encouraged the directors to have creative freedom.
Yeah, Toby Haynes, Susanna White, Benjamin Caron in season 1. And the season 2 directors too. He wanted their input.
And you see that each arc maybe has a slightly different feel, but it's all cohesive. And the pacing, the way they shot, the complex sequences.
That cross-cutting technique they use sometimes, jumping between locations during tense moments, really effective.
Yeah, ramped up the anxiety. Okay, let's talk cast. Diego Luna.
Magnetic is the word. You absolutely buy Cassian's journey from, just looking out for himself to becoming something more.
A reluctant hero, almost.
Yeah. And then Stellan Skarsgård as Luthen Rail.
Wow. Just wow. That monologue in One Way Out.
Chilling. Instantly iconic. Defines that character in the show's harder edges.
And Genevieve O'Reilly as Mon Mothma. They gave her so much more to do here than just, delivering exposition in a briefing room.
Absolutely. Gilroy loved her performance so much, he basically expanded her role. You see the immense pressure she's under, the compromises she has to make. It's that synergy, again, great writing meeting great acting.
And it wasn't just the good guys. The antagonists were fascinating.
Dedra Meero and Cyril Karn. So far from your typical cackling Imperial villains.
Right. They felt real, driven by ambition, insecurity.
Yeah, flawed individuals, and their dynamic, that awkward, almost creepy thing Cyril had going with Dedra.
So weird, but it grounded them.
Exactly. It made them feel human, which somehow makes the empire they represent feel even more insidious. It's not just abstract evil, it's a system run by people like this.
That's a really good point, and the supporting cast was stacked too.
Andy Serkis as Kino Loy, unforgettable arc.
His big moment. Goosebumps.
Fiona Shaw as Mararva, her final message, just electrifying.
Fight the Empire. Still gives me chills.
Adria Arjona as Vix, too. Maybe some felt her arc could have gone further in S2, but still a compelling performance.
It really felt like an ensemble. Gilroy called it a choir of characters.
That's a great description. And that commitment to realism, to making it feel tangible, went beyond the characters into the world itself.
Yeah, the production design, the look of the show.
Yeah.
It felt so real.
Lived in, textured. And a big reason for that, sources say, was prioritizing practical locations and building huge physical sets.
Instead of relying too heavily on the volume, the big LED screen tech.
Right, which can sometimes make things feel a bit, contained or artificial. Here, you felt the scale, the grit.
You really did. Ferrix felt like a real place you could walk around.
Coruscant felt imposing and cold. Aldani felt vast. Narkina 5 felt sterile and horrifying.
Gorman felt tense and volatile. Each place had its own identity.
And the cinematography was crucial in that. Adriano Goldman, Frank Lamb, Damian Garcia, Christoph Nuyens. Incredible work.
The way they shot the Imperial settings versus the civilian places really underlined the themes, didn't it?
Absolutely. That contrast in visual language, sterile versus organic, imposing versus decaying it, reinforced the whole conflict.
And we have to talk about the music. Nicholas Britell's score for season 1.
Emmy-nominated, and rightly so. It was so different for Star Wars.
Less traditionally melodic, more atmospheric.
Yeah, focused on mood, internal states. Those character motifs for Cassian, Luthen, Marva were so effective at building emotional depth without being intrusive.
And Brandon Roberts, who took over for season 2, apparently did a fantastic job building on that.
Widely praised. Impeccable was a word used. The music wasn't just background noise, it was part of the storytelling, exploring that tension and moral grayness.
Which leads us perfectly into the themes, because this show wasn't afraid to get into some serious stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It works as this gripping political thriller, but also as a really stark look at fascism, oppression, and what it actually takes to resist.
And it showed Imperial control wasn't just about stormtroopers and Star Destroyers.
No, it was bureaucratic, economic, social, psychological. The arbitrary rules, the brutal enforcement, the surveillance.
Narkina 5, that whole prison industrial complex aspect, was chilling.
Chilling is the word. And propaganda, economic exploitation on places like Ferrix. It painted this detailed picture of authoritarianism.
And against that, the show gave us this really grounded, unflinching look at how rebellion actually begins.
Right, it's not glamorous. It's messy, dangerous, morally complicated, often born out of just sheer desperation.
And the reasons people join are so different, so personal. Loss, ideology, just refusing to stand by anymore.
And the show didn't ignore the costs, the sacrifices, the risk of betrayal, the arguments within the rebellion itself.
Luthen is the embodiment of that, isn't he? The ruthless pragmatism, the moral compromises.
He forces you to ask really uncomfortable questions. And the show emphasizes that resistance isn't just about heroes, it's about ordinary people doing extraordinary, often dangerous things.
That depth really took it beyond just being, a fun sci-fi show. It felt relevant, like commentary.
Critics definitely picked up on that. The timeliness, the parallels to real-world struggles.
That Peabody Award citation said it created a terrifying world uncannily like our very own.
That's powerful. It really is. And it connects to that whole debate people had. Does Andor feel like Star Wars?
Right, the tension between the mythic side and this gritty political side.
But Andor's success kind of proved that Star Wars can be this. That the political thriller, the human drama, is a totally valid and compelling part of this universe.
You don't need a lightsaber in every scene to tell a great Star Wars story.
Exactly. And yet, amidst all that darkness, there was still this thread of hope, wasn't there?
Yeah, and the Acts of Defiance, Nemik's manifesto, try.
Mariva's speech, fight the Empire. That belief that things can be better even if it costs everything.
It really grounds the struggle in something meaningful. Which brings us to the reception. How did all this land?
Critically, it was basically adored, just about universal acclaim.
Yeah, consistently called one of the best shows, period, and definitely the highest rated live-action Star Wars.
The numbers are pretty stark. Rotten Tomatoes, Season 1, 96%. Season 2 started even higher, like 98, 99%.
It's insane. Higher than Empire Strikes Back critically.
In terms of initial critical consensus for live action, yeah. And Metacritic was similar. Season 2 hit universal acclaim.
And reviewers were just throwing superlatives around. Masterpiece, Star Wars at its best, Star Wars for adults.
Great television, miracle. I mean, the praise was effusive.
And the awards followed, right? That Peabody is huge.
Huge, plus tons of Emmy nominations, outstanding drama, writing, directing, and nods from BAFTA, Critics' Choice, Golden Globes, SAG, WGA. Pretty much everyone recognized its quality.
Okay, so critics loved it. What about the audience? Was it a massive hit, viewership-wise?
That's where it gets a little more complex, maybe. Audience scores were good, like 8.0 on Metacritic, 8.4 on IMDb overall. Certain episodes, like One Way Out, rated incredibly high individually.
So people watching it really liked it.
Passionately, they loved the maturity, the writing, but the overall viewership numbers, especially for season 1, they weren't quite at the level of, say, The Mandalorian, especially given the show's reported high budget.
Right, there was talk about the budget being pretty substantial.
Yeah, maybe $300-400 million for season 2 was floated. And this was against a backdrop of, streaming competition, maybe some subscriber decline.
And maybe the show itself, being more demanding, appealed to a slightly smaller, though very dedicated group.
That's definitely part of the discussion. Although there was evidence that word of mouth helped it grow during season 1.
So it found its audience, even if it wasn't maybe the biggest audience initially.
Exactly. And when you compare Andor's scores to other Star Wars shows, it's consistently at the very top critically, which raises interesting questions about what success means now for these big streaming shows.
Is it just eyeballs, or is it prestige, reputation, attracting a certain kind of viewer?
Right. Maybe for Disney and Lucasfilm, Andor's value wasn't just raw numbers, but the critical acclaim, the artistic cred, bringing in that adult audience that appreciates sophisticated drama.
It makes you think about the role of these kinds of ambitious, maybe slightly niche projects within these huge franchises.
Definitely. So wrapping this up, what made Andor such a success story?
Well, it seems like it was that potent mix. Gilroy's really specific, grounded vision.
Executed brilliantly across the board, writing, directing, acting, design, music.
Tackling these deep, resonant themes about oppression and resistance fearlessly.
And earning that massive critical acclaim.
It definitely left a mark on Star Wars, didn't it? Proved it could do sophisticated adult drama and really fleshed out that whole period before Rogue One.
And it stands tall just as great television, regardless of the franchise.
A testament to smart, uncompromising, character-driven storytelling.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener. How does Andor's way of telling its story, its focus on the political and the personal costs of resistance, maybe change how you think about those themes in fiction?
Or even maybe think about how we define success for these big streaming shows. Is it just about the numbers, or is there value in critical acclaim and cultural impact too, something to chew on.